Hey folks, happy holidays, Comic Cowboy here for you and with the brand spanking new video. I know it's been a while, trust me, I've been super busy collecting books for the last couple months and wanted to get a new fresh video out to you folks. So thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to talk about books outside the Silver and Golden Age spectrum. Typically I focus on those eras. That's principally what I collect, keys and Golden, Silver Age, etc. Today I'm going to cover a little bit bronze, a little bit of modern, just 3 books. I've recently been participating in this category. I haven't before because there's just too many wild fluctuations of the prices. And it's hard to catch things when they're going up because they sometimes can fall on you. But recently I've noticed that there's some books in these categories that are worth getting your hands on that are, I would say, pretty safe, reliable investments. And I'm going to start with some books that you're probably all very familiar with. And they're interesting. And to my left, I've got the current GPA data up because I'm going to talk a little bit about how these books have traded and sold over the last year and a half or so. No surprise here is this book here, New Mutants 98 from 1991, would be considered a modern book, I suppose. Here in white pages in 9.8. I think, at least in my opinion, if you're going to dabble in this category of book, you really want to focus on high grade 9.8, essentially, maybe 9.6 depending on the book, depending on what your budget is. But it's certainly 9.0 and higher. Why? Because there's a lot of copies of this book out there, graded and otherwise. Because of the value of the book, most of these copies are slabbed these days. I love 9.8. Always go white pages with this more contemporary book because you want to distinguish your 9.8 from other 9.8s. All grades are not the same, even with material such as this. You want to look at the centering of the book. You want to look for any flaws, the colors on the cover, etc. White pages, always, if you can, get white pages, even with Silver Age books, if you can, or off-white to white. Cool book. And looking at the data, this copy in 9.8 last sold, I think, in Heritage's auction this past month, actually, for $1,114. Previously, what's interesting, in 2019, the book essentially sold for $724, and then it was higher in 2018 at $824. Essentially what's happening here, I think, in the comics and collectibles area is we're seeing this phenomenon right now across the whole spectrum. Maybe you've seen this, of collectibles right now. Whether you're talking PSA graded cards, sports cards, or Magic or Pokemon, all that material is lifting up. You're seeing this really strange phenomenon happening with, let's say, the Ninja Turtles franchise across almost all collectible categories. It's unbelievable what's going on there and I think actually what ignited it, and it's hard to essentially prove this point, is it started to really take off in the wadded graded video game collectible space. The Ninja Turtle stuff from the NES and onwards, but particularly the NES games started to go bonkers, right? So did the wadded graded Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow started to go through the roof, right? And that franchise simultaneously at the same time, not Pokemon, because it doesn't matter in comic books. It only matters in cards. However, with Ninja Turtles, at the same time, the original book from the mid-1980s went nuts. These collectible categories are associated with one another, right? There gets to be a bit of heat around a particular franchise, in that euphoria and that frenzy and that froth starts to go across the books too. And so that's been happening. And I think at the same time, there's been a wave of new collectors coming into these categories that probably you and I have been in for years and years, and in some cases decades. A lot of new folks coming in, mostly through the video game categories, because that's WATA graded games is a relatively new category, and it's right there in Heritage with all the other stuff bundled in your Sunday, Monday night auctions, the weeklies, right? Comic Link, let's see who else, Comic Connect. All the folks who are in the graded games is bringing in new stimulus of money and collectors, and it helps the books. And I think some of these collectors are of a newer variety, right? They're not necessarily collecting material from the 40s and the 50s, right? So I think, the first appearance of Deadpool is basically about, if you got $1,000 and you're collecting books, thou could do almost no wrong by getting this particular book. I think it's a really solid pickup, even today. If you look at all the December prices on GP Analysis, it's simply rising in grade. And then just looking back at the last 4 or 5 years of this book, it hasn't gone crazy. In 2014, keep in mind, it was selling at $1,000. 2015, $1,200. That's kind of close. These are highs, mind you, to where it's at now. It hit a high at some point, non-signature, I don't know how this sale was recorded, of $2,000. Almost 250 of these books change hands as far as the tracking goes. I love this book. I think if you're going to get into modern contemporary, that's just blue chip. I'd be shocked if it went down. May go down like a touch here and there. Deadpool, not going anywhere. Very important to the MCU. Very important to all the franchises that are happening in that arena. Here's another really kind of interesting book that I picked up recently. You probably know it, right? If you could see it there on camera. It's Batman Adventures number 12 from '93. First appearance of Harley Quinn in comics. From 1993, again, white pages. I really wanted to find a spectacular copy of this book. I love this book. I just like the character. I think the artwork on the cover is fantastic, and Harley is absolutely important and vital to the DC universe and to the films and to the Joker mythology. She's an important character, and this is just a fantastic book here with the wonderful cover. Looking at the prices here, it has been slightly, I would say, all over the map, but it's been fairly consistent. It's a book that, I'm looking at the data here in front of me, essentially has been trading up and down in this $2,000 to $2,500 range, frankly, for the last 5 years. It's just always sort of usually at around $2,400, $2,500. I recently saw a copy on the CGC boards, the Copper Modern Age category. Someone was selling for $1,900. That's a steal. Had I not had a copy here, I would have picked it up. The thing about these modern books that's, I think, really different than the collecting when you're in Golden Age and Silver Age. When I'm in those categories, I don't know about you, I'm picking up one book at a time, and you may not see another copy for quite a while because of the scarcity of those books. And when you do acquire a title from, I don't know, a superhero line from the 40s or the 50s, whether it's Captain America, maybe you've got a Schomburg cover or a USA Comics from the 40s, it's not like you're going to see those books routinely in auction, right, in the same number, maybe a different number in the sequence. And typically, collectors, when you're talking about those books, when the census numbers are so low, oftentimes you're really thinking about upgrading the copy you have if you really like that book. You're not looking to get 4 or 5 copies of it, because the census may have 10 in grade, right, with a total of 30 to 50 in the entirety census report with some of these books. I make that point because when you're dealing with modern books, I really think a strategy here is to get multiple copies because you can. Like, if you're really bullish on the book, this becomes somewhat of an investment where you could get multiple copies somewhat readily, as opposed to one copy and you're simply tracking and keeping this book. And again, I think this book really has some substantial legs. It's got a floor, right? It tends not to drop below $2,000, and if anything, it seems to be slightly incrementally going up over time. Now I got to go back into the Bronze Age. This is kind of a fun book. It's X-Men 94. The new X-Men begins. I don't know about you, but I actually remember these books when I was younger. It's from 1975, so I was probably a little bit older when I first encountered it. I wasn't 5 buying this stuff or whatever. But this is a really kind of excellent book that is, I found it in white pages. Again, with some of these books, even when talking Bronze Age, hold out for your perfect copy because there are copies available. Hold out to get your white pages or your off-white to white, right? Don't drop too much there. And then, when you're looking in the sort of 9.0 and above category, you really want to look at all the minor imperfections and flaws in books. Let's look at the data for this particular book to see how this investment has held out recently and over the last few years. Here it is again in 9.0. This book just sold for $959 in December. It goes all the way up, almost double, to $1,800 in December, also at the 9.2. Typically that is a yardstick. When you're above 9.0 to 9.2 to 9.4 to 9.6, it starts doubling with some keys. Not always the case. But when you do see it doubling incrementally like that, that's a sign of a lot of health of the book. Looking at this copy of 9.0, if you look at the path forward since 2011, the last 9 years, it's steadily gone up. I guess it's kept up with inflation, but it's gone up like $100 at least every year in terms of the average sale price. Hit a high this year of $1,400, right? I just think it's actually a gorgeous book. I think it aesthetically is pleasing. I'm not saying go out and buy multiple copies of this particular book, but I think as X-Men collectors, it certainly belongs in anyone's collection. So, I'm curious to know if any of my viewers and followers are collecting, I guess you would say Bronze Age or Copper Age or modern, copper and modern, whatever. I think once you're outside of the early to mid 1980s, you're getting into kind of contemporary books. I like this stuff. I don't really know the categories profoundly, but I do know these mega keys. And if anything, a good rule of thumb always should be, when in doubt, buy keys. It's a good strategy. Even when I first started collecting the comics, I didn't know much. I just remembered what I liked as a kid. And that was the X-Men and to an extent the Fantastic Four. So I started buying that stuff in higher grade, and I lucked out because those books have performed real well. So hey, happy holidays, have a great new year, good to see you. Like the video if you could, subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and have a good one.